Welcome to Exponential Mindset, where we explore the ideas reshaping our world so we can prepare and seize opportunities. Today we're drawing on perspectives from Emad Mostaque's book, The Last Economy.
All right, let's get right into it. The book kicks off with this huge contradiction. You look at one dashboard, the official one, right? The stock market's through the roof, GDP's growing, unemployment's low. On paper, everything looks fantastic. But then you look at the other dashboard, the human one, and it's a totally different story. Life satisfaction, it's tanking. We're seeing this awful epidemic of deaths of despair. We are, as the book puts it, richer on paper and poorer in spirit than at any point in modern history. How can both of these things be true at the same time?
So Mostaque calls this moment we're in a 1,000-day window. And, this isn't some doomsday prediction. It's more like an estimate. The time we have left before this massive shift we're going through becomes, irreversible. Think of it like a deadline. Not for the end of the world, but a deadline for us to actually make a conscious choice about what comes next.
Okay, so what's going on here? Why this giant disconnect between the numbers and how people are actually feeling? The book's argument is pretty stark. It's because the basic assumptions our whole economic system is built on, they're not just a little bit wrong anymore. They become what he calls fatal lies.
And the first lie? Oh, this is a big one. It's the one we all got drilled into us in Econ 101. The idea that economics is basically the study of scarcity, right? That's the prime directive. Everything else comes from that. But what happens when that's just not the fundamental rule of the game anymore?
And that leads to this complete breakdown in logic. Seriously, think about this. What is the price of an idea that you can copy 1 billion times for free? In a world where an AI can churn out 1 million legal documents or an infinite number of songs, the cost to make one more is basically zero. We've hit post-scarcity when it comes to intelligence, and our economic system, which is built entirely on scarcity, just can't handle it. It sees this amazing abundance as a complete disaster.
All right, line number 2. This one's about us. It's the belief that human labor will always be worth something. You know the story we've been told forever. Technology comes along, gets rid of some jobs, but it always creates new, even better ones. We just have to re-skill, right? Go learn to code or whatever the next thing is. But the argument here is that AI is a totally different beast. See, before, automation replaced our muscles, so we shifted to using our brains. But AI replaces our brains. It replaces the cognitive work itself. So when our ability to think is the thing being outcompeted, for the first time ever, there's nowhere left to pivot. That's a huge claim. So this isn't just about another cool new gadget or piece of software. The book frames this as something much, much bigger. We're talking about the fourth and possibly the final time in all of human history that the very thing that creates value in our economy has completely flipped upside down.
Let's just walk through this real quick. For thousands of years, if you had land, you had value. Simple. Then the Industrial Revolution hits, and suddenly value comes from organizing labor, building factories. Then, around the 1970s, it flips again. Value comes from owning capital, especially things like software. And now, today, we're in what he calls the final inversion. Intelligence itself, completely disconnected from a human brain, is becoming the ultimate source of value. And here's the really critical part. We're not just competing with a faster or smarter worker. We are competing with a whole new category of labor. For the very first time, we're up against something that doesn't have any biological needs. It doesn't need to eat, it doesn't need to sleep, it doesn't need a house. All it needs is electricity. And that just completely breaks the old economic rulebook.
Okay, so if the old rules are broken, what do we do? Where do we go from here? Well, the book suggests we need a totally new framework, basically a new dashboard for our civilization, one that actually measures if we're healthy or not.
And the problem really starts with our current main dial, GDP. Think about how weird GDP is. A hurricane that destroys a city, that's good for GDP because of the rebuilding. A massive health crisis, good for GDP because of all the spending. It's a number that is completely blind to actual human well-being or the health of our planet.
So the replacement that's proposed is this mind dashboard. It's based on 4 capitals that all depend on each other. So you've got M for material capital, that's our physical world, our resources. I is for intelligence, our collective ability to solve problems. N is for network, that's all about trust, the connections that let society function. And finally, D is for diversity, the variety that keeps us resilient and adaptable.
Now this is the really interesting part. These 4 capitals, they don't just add together, they multiply. And that's a huge deal, because what does that mean?
It means if you get a 0 in any one of those categories, say your ecosystem completely collapses or social trust hits 0, the whole equation goes to 0. Boom. Total system failure. It doesn't matter how great the other 3 are.
This new way of looking at things also shows us that value doesn't just move in one way. It actually flows in 3 different ways. And I love this analogy in the book. For centuries, you had these brilliant thinkers, Adam Smith, Karl Marx, Hayek, and it was like they were all in a dark room describing an elephant. One felt the trunk, one felt the leg, and each one thought they were describing the whole animal. The truth is, all 3 of their flows are real, and a healthy economy has to get all of them right.
And this brings us right back to that urgent choice, that 1,000-day window. Because as our old system starts to creak and fail, the book argues there are really only 3 possible futures that we could end up in.
Okay, so what are the options? The first is called digital feudalism, and this is the default path, the one we're kind of sliding into right now. A few megacorporations own the AI, and everyone else basically lives on some kind of subsistence universal basic income. The second option? The great fragmentation. This is where countries panic, they build digital walls around their AIs and data, and we end up in a new kind of algorithmic Cold War. And then there's the third path, which is by far the hardest. It's human symbiosis. And that's where we actively, consciously design a new system where AI is built to amplify human purpose, not just replace it.
So at the end of the day, the book doesn't just hand us a prediction and say, this is what's going to happen. It's more of an urgent invitation, a call to action. We're the generation that's living right in the middle of this massive change. We can sit back and just watch as our old roles become obsolete, or we can roll up our sleeves and start building the new systems that are going to carry us through this. The choice for this brief moment in time is still ours to make.